Good evening to you. My name is Raj Kumar. I'm the founding Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University. It is indeed my proud privilege to welcome all of you to this Eminent Educators Colloquium, Agenda Setting for Leadership. This colloquium is organized by OP Jindal Global University in collaboration with the education world. The theme of this evening's seminar is the future of education, conflict resolution, and peace. I have great pleasure in welcoming a very distinguished set of educators. But before I do that, I would like to briefly introduce the theme of today's colloquium. The mainstream schooling system around the world have been very focused on imparting disciplinary content knowledge and making students competitive for their future career. The social studies and values education curriculum teach students about the rights and duties as a good citizen in a democracy theoretically, but rarely do our schools focus on social and emotional learning about how to deal with conflicts, both internal emotional conflicts and external conflicts with others in society. Human beings are inherently social beings. As part of our humanity, we also experience emotional and social conflicts in our daily life. The COVID-19 crisis has demonstrated and brought to the forefront some of these issues. Growing up as adolescents, often students can experience different kinds of conflicting emotions. Students can have conflicting situations with their classmates, peers, and even teachers. Teachers and administrators can also experience negative emotions and conflicts within themselves and indeed with their colleagues. This aspect of addressing the conflict is in many ways central to the discussion that we intend to have today. And I'm very delighted that a very distinguished set of educators have accepted our invitation and have joined us today. During the time of a global crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic, students, teachers, and school leaders can find themselves in the middle of all kinds of internal and external conflicts. It is now more than ever before, it is important to discuss the role of social and emotional learning for conflict resolution and peace. Hence, during today's Eminent Educators Colloquium, we'll deliberate on this issue to learn from the eminent educators who will share their views and perspectives. Let me have the pleasure to formally introduce my distinguished guest. Mr. Ashish Gulati is the Vice Chairman of Bluebell's Group of Schools, Gurugram. Mr. Gulati has a first degree in engineering and is a postgraduate in management from the prestigious Management Development Institute, MDI, Gurugram. He worked in the corporate sector before joining the Board of Governors of the Bluebell's Group of Schools in 2001. With a keen interest in behavioral sciences and change management, he has initiated and implemented several organizational development measures across schools. Today, the group is recognized and acknowledged for its child-centric culture of empathy, performance, compassion, and commitment towards holistic learning. Mr. Gulati has been vital to this growth story, and I welcome Mr. Gulati to this Eminent Educators Colloquium.
Thank you, Raj.
We have with us Ms. Geeta Jayant, who is the principal of Legacy School, Bengaluru, India. She's a seasoned educator with over 20 years of experience in school administration, career counseling, and teaching in a repertoire of various curricula. Her experience includes instructional leadership, curriculum development, technology integration, and leadership development. As an authorized school evaluator for CIS and NEASC school accreditation, she has been on school authorization visits across the world and is currently on the Global Advisory Board of St. Andrews University, Scotland, and IU University, Spain, and the School of Education at Christ University, India. She was awarded the Molly Abraham Lifetime Achievement Award for her contribution in the field of education and college counseling at the International Career and College Counseling Conference, IC3, in August 2019. Thank you, Ms. Jain, for joining us today. We have with us Dr. Vandana Lulla, who is the director of PODA Group of International Schools Undertaking, the International Curricula, and the principal of PODA International School, which is IB and Cambridge Board in Santa Cruz West in Mumbai. She's the vice president of South Asian International Baccalaureate Schools Association. She's regarded and respected by parents for being extremely approachable and indeed accessible. This has led to the Podar International School being ranked #1 for best parental involvement by none other than the Education World magazine. Under her astounding leadership and maintaining high institutional quality, her school has secured a hat-trick in terms of Best School Award by Digital Learning, Hindustan Times, and the Education World. She has been bestowed with the Rajya Puraskar Award by the government of Maharashtra for selfless work done in the field of education. She has also recently been awarded the prestigious Mahatma Gandhi Leadership Award for Outstanding Services in Education by Ms. Preet Kaur Gill, Member of Parliament, UK, at the House of Lords in the United Kingdom. Thank you, Dr. Lula, for joining us this evening. We have with us Mr. John Ruffy, who is currently the principal of La Martiniere School for Boys at Kolkata. He has a teaching experience of more than 20 years, a considerable part of which has been in La Martiniere College in Lucknow, where he taught physics in the senior classes. He did his schooling from St. Joseph's Academy, Dehradun. After his graduation, he qualified the CDS examination and subsequently was selected to join the Indian Navy as an officer cadet, where he completed the first term of the training. However, he had to resign prior to commissioning as an officer owing to compassionate grounds at home. This training had inculcated disciplined administrative and management skills and indeed helped him build this institution. He then moved into teaching, which he found to be a joyous profession. He has co-authored a text-cum handbook on ISC physics and has been a resource person at a number of symposiums and panel discussions. He received the Rashtriya Pratibha Award in September 2017 from ISTA. He also received the Inspiring Best Teacher Award in November 2017 from the University of Engineering and Management and the Mother Teresa International Award in January 2020. Thank you, Mr. John Ruffy, for joining us this evening. And of course,
indeed, a pleasure and honor. Thank you.
We have with us my collaborator and co-conspirator, Mr. Dilip Thakur, the publisher and editor of Education World and Parents World. Since November 99, the publisher and editor of Education World, the Human Development Magazine. As you know, Education World is India's, perhaps Asia's first education news and analysis magazine with a national readership comprising academics, parents, and high school students. Their estimated readership is about 1 million across the country. Earlier, he was founding editor of Business India and Business World, India's first two business magazines, which catalyzed the economic liberalization and the deregulation initiative of 1991. With those words, let me quickly move into today's discussion. I also want to extend a warm welcome to all our audience who are watching us live on Facebook and YouTube. As you progress in this program, please send in your questions. After the first segment of this session that I have with our speakers, we will take your questions as well. My first question is actually to Ms. Geeta Jain. Ms. Jain, one of the things that we want to begin the discussion is to recognize the role of family. And stressful environment at home, even when they do not directly involve the child, that will inevitably impact the life and indeed the perspectives of the children. Not just her performance in academics or co-curricular activities, but also her relationships with classmates and even teachers. How do you think schools should deal with this issue? Because at the end of the day, the relationship between the school and the parents are somewhat different from the school and the child itself.
Right. I think I missed a bit of your question because I think you went off. So yeah, okay. I just wanted a bit of a summary again.
I'll say that the question was about, we know that family plays a major role in the life of any child. And we know that if there are tensions and stressful environment at home, even when they do not directly involve the child, this will inevitably impact the life and perspective of a child, not just her performance in academics or co-curricular activities, but also her relationships with peers, classmates, and even teachers. How do you think schools should respond to this issue, particularly when the relationship between a parent and the family members and the school is somewhat different from what the school can do with the child itself?
Right. So what we do, Mr. Kumar, is I think when the child comes into a school, I think I'll break this into two bit. One is when the child comes into a school, is that a child a good fit in our school? I mean, are we right in the culture bit? So that's what we look at. But once the child comes in, the tensions can come at any point in time. So what we do as a school is we have two systems. For the little children, we have a buddy system. Where, when children come in and you start noticing any challenges with the child, is what we get our counselors involved, and they look for options that, okay, if the child is disturbed. But in the senior school, we have an option, which is along with the class teacher, there's a mentor-mentee relationship, And if we again, a mentor starts noticing that there are challenges with the child at home because those discussions start coming up, depending on how grave the situation is, the child is referred to the school counselor. And if it gets even more, where you feel that challenges seem even more extreme, we try to get into the parents and just have a chat there and to see that if we can resolve it through parental involvement so that we could create a more conducive environment for child at home. So these are some things what we look at overall in a school setting.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Jayanth, for setting the stage for the larger context in which we will engage with the school and the overall growth and evolution of the students. Let me move to Ms. Vandana Lula. Ms. Lula, students obviously are emotionally dependent on caring adults around them, especially when they enter school. There are a lot of expectations on the part of the teachers, including the school counselors, and even the people who are administering the school itself. Now, how do you ensure that the children who come to school find it to be a welcoming and caring space, particularly when there is a lot of diversity and in many ways uh, the, the necessity to deal with the diversity from a school standpoint?
Uh, Thank you very much and a very good evening to everyone. It's a pleasure to see Dilip and of course Raj. Hi Dilip. Yeah, I think, when you talk about the whole dynamics of the school, it's very important for everybody to know that the entire dynamics of the school is very, very different. When it's in school campus and now we are talking about all distance learning that's happening with students today. So when you look at the philosophy of the school, when you look at the mission of the school, we have very clearly, our philosophy, our mission clearly says providing safe, supportive and stimulating environment. And I think you build a culture in the school based on your philosophy. And these three words, which are very clearly defined from day one, when we meet parents, when we meet students, when we meet teachers, when we have induction programs for the teachers, for the students, for the parents, that these are three very important words. The school is here to support you. The children are safe here. And we do everything to make the children safe, right from the time the arrival of the children to the dispersal of the students. You will find the head of the school, that's me, will be standing at the gate to welcome the children and also wish them goodbye at the end of the day. And the whole staff comes down to meet children and welcome the children. So you build a culture. And also during our teaching and learning, the entire curriculum, the underpinning of the curriculum is based on the philosophy of the school. That how do you make the children feel safe? How do you make sure that they have the kind of freedom, they have the kind of feeling of there is no difference between the teacher or the head of the school or any department. You can express, you can definitely debate. So we make sure that most students of the school have this clear understanding, and also teachers have the understanding. When we have an induction for the teachers, we say we're not here to say, okay, there are certain expectations, but we are also here to help you. I think that help and support, safe and support, is an important aspect of a culture that you build in the school. So nobody has left me. The retention of my teachers for last 25 years is the same. The students, nobody leaves you. So that speaks about the culture and the kind of philosophy that you have in the school. I think that is over a period of time that gets built in any school. So I don't see why children should feel emotionally. They can just walk into my office. Outside my office, I don't have my nameplate. It doesn't say Dr. Vandana Lula, principal. I just hate it when people say PhD, MN. It says a friend who cares. That's it.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lula. And I think it is only fair to say that the ecosystem matters, and indeed the leadership and culture that the schools foster gives confidence to both the parents and the students. Now, let me move to Mr. John Rafi. Mr. Rafi, teenage years, as we all know, are full of turmoil and self-doubt. Mood swings are common. There is higher consciousness about one's physical image, but equally important, what other people think about oneself. These are also the years when academically the students are in crucial stages, the foundations of their future, including careers, and these days, goals, aspirations, all of them get formed and even created during those years. Now, do you have specific programs, interventions that you think that should help students better manage their emotions during teen years, particularly when the social and family and even institutional expectations that are generated end up being much higher than what, let's say, an individual student is able to manage?
Once again, good evening to one and all, and indeed a pleasure and honor, and wish to, at the outset, commend and congratulate the organizers for this wonderful platform, and thank you for having me over. So, since we're talking about teens, it may seem hard to believe, given a teen's anger or indifference towards his parents, teachers, studies, but let's understand that teens still crave for love, approval, acceptance, especially from the teachers and parents. That means we have a lot more influence over our teens than we actually think. I believe that before any specific programs or interventions, understanding and helping our teens begins in the classroom. And so what we've done is that our teachers are always there for the teens. That's most important. It's important to show that we are available. And even my office is open to them. So if the children feel at times, they do walk in. It is not like the yesteryears where we would shudder to even think to walk past the principal's office. But here I have children, especially during break time, who would want to come in and share certain issues. So it's important to listen to them without judging or giving advice. That's what I tell my teachers also. And to maintain an eye contact with these children, even when he or she is not looking at you. Teens want to feel understood and valued by us. Successfully connecting to teens takes time and effort. So patience is very, very important.
John, can you unmute yourself?
It just got unmuted. I don't know. Is it?
It got unmuted.
You're fine.
Now you're okay.
So you missed out on the last sentence, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, so what I'm saying is that we need to be a role model to them and set an example by our speech and by our actions, by our life. And that's when they will start listening to us. So I think even, as I said, that they feel wanted and crave for love. I think, being calm and being polite with them goes a long way. And we need to show them that there's a genuine concern. However, we also need to know that we have to set some appropriate limits. Punishments do not work nowadays. Once they did. But implementing and following rules is very important. So that's where we start. But if these teens, things start going out of hand, then obviously we have to keep the parents in the loop. We have our school counselors separate for the middle school and the senior school. That's where they come in. And then they step in, they start counseling. And even I have tried my hand at it. So I'm not a certified counselor, but maybe with experience. And we have been quite successful. So that's how we look at it. However, keeping in mind that nothing should set a very unhealthy or a wrong precedence, there are appropriate disciplinary actions also taken just to set the tone right. for the others to learn.
Got you.
So that's what we do. Thank you so much.
Very much, Mr. Rafi. I think the delicate balance that one needs to achieve when you need to be stern, when you need to, but yet develop and connect with the young people is absolutely critical. Mr. Gulati, now one of the things that is that has been a very common experience is to how to deal with rebellion. As you see, we've all seen that among young people. Rebellion is a common feature of teenage years. Teenage children are also possibly likely to engage in risky behaviors. So how do we deal with such, aspects of one's behavior? Now, what could be a school's policy towards such acts, and how to ensure that the children are less vulnerable when it comes to dealing with pursuing risky behaviors? Now, here I'm conscious of the fact that there is a disciplinary context in which schools function, colleges, universities do as well. But my question really is that what kind of engagement with the student community enables them to become conscious of the potential risks associated with that such behavior, and in that process reduce vulnerability of the children themselves?
Yeah. So, Raj, before I go into the structure and mechanisms of handling rebellion, I would like to share with you and the panel my understanding of the causality of rebellion.
Sure.
Rebellion, I think, is innate to human existence. It can happen at all ages. It happens at all ages, at all levels of political and social platforms, and it is also a labeling mechanism in terms of its channelization into activism and transformative approaches. So, coming to the specific school context of rebellion, I think rebellion happens either because of intrinsic reasons of self-identity, or because of extrinsic reasons where the structure does not recognize the agency of the individual, and the individual is left feeling ignored, is left feeling insignificant, and left feeling with a feeling of being oppressed. Intrinsically, I think it happens because of the struggle of self-identity that is forming more so in adolescence. So, as an approach, and if I may share with the audience in the panel, some 10 years back, we made an intervention in our schools, wherein we did some brainstorming and revisited the purpose of our existence. And we discovered and deliberated and consciously became conscious of the fact that schools today are evolving into more of socio-emotional institutions as opposed to instructional only, the so-called temples of learning or so-called radiance of knowledge and skills. So we took a very conscious decision to adopt a socio-emotional approach and devote a lot of time, energy, and resources into building a robust health and wellness program. That is, as far as the mechanics is concerned, the structures and mechanics of addressing the issues of socio-emotional development is concerned. The thought behind and the intent was to also, through this mechanism, inculcate a culture which is more empathetic, egalitarian, and tolerant. Now, the first things that rebellion demands is a validation of that rebellion, to my mind. Because when you try to suppress validation by coercion, you may be temporarily able to suppress it, but it will occur in some other form.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Gulati, for that really powerful articulation of the challenge of rebellion. I think it's only fair to say that the way schools and institutions like yours and others responding to it will potentially give confidence to students, and in that process, reduce the risk and vulnerability.
So just to complete the piece, we have structures and processes of first validating, secondly empathizing with the rebellious agency, with the rebellious individual, and addressing it through means which are more empathetic and humanistic. If that does not work, then we involve the family. If that still does not work, we involve mental health workers. If it still doesn't work, then we willingly have to fall in on the framework of rules and regulations. And in very rare circumstances, which has occurred only once in 40 years of our existence, we also had to seek legal help because it was going beyond the boundaries of law. That is as far as the structure and form that we take to address.
Thank you, Dr. Gulati, for that really comprehensive set of reflections. I think it is instructive for institutions as to how they'll have to be prepared for such an eventuality. But I think one does give a longer room when it comes to seeking potential transformation of the individual itself. Dilip, now let me take you to the sort of the larger context of social and emotional learning. In a recent blog post, the director of UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace, Ananta Durepa, writes that social and emotional learning is key to achieving conflict resolution and peace in society. He asserts, and I quote, this systematic inculcation of SEL skills, that is social and emotional learning skills, will trigger the mindset change we desperately need to build a peaceful and sustainable world, unquote. So my question to you is that from the standpoint of policy and broader ecosystem within a society where schools function, what should we emphasize? What should we be doing with regard to building the capacity for promoting social and emotional learning skills for our students?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And in fact, I hate to say this, but I think, our education system, I hate to say this, but India is a very violent society, and there are a lot of deeply rooted prejudices which have not been eradicated for like the last 70 years. Like casteism, I'm ashamed to say this, but it's still virulent in Indian society. Communal prejudice, caste prejudices. One would have thought that by now we would have got rid of all this. So to that extent, I regret to say.
And of course, gender as well.
And gender as well, absolutely. So deeply ingrained. And I hate to say this, but I think that's also the fault of the education system. It's the fault of educators. If they have not been able to eradicate this from the mind of maybe now 2 generations of post-independence India's children, there's something radically wrong in the education system, and it reflects a failure also of educators. So I'm very happy that you've chosen this, and it's imperative, I think, for all schools, as you quoted, as reflected in the quote that you mentioned, that you must consciously teach peace, conflict resolution and peace. And I don't think that's in the curriculum. One says, of course, it's mixed up with the history and other subject kind of curricula. But I think the time has really come because, instead of casteism, gender violence, communal prejudice having been eradicated, there is evidence to show that's actually increasing. And this is really a very disturbing situation. And all of us who are involved in education, obviously, we have to do something about it. And we have to directly address the problem and teach conflict resolution and peace. How to spread peace, harmony, etc. Consciously has to be taught in schools and reiterated by teachers. I think to that extent, I think teachers and educators have failed, and that's what's happening in society is a reflection of what's happened in the education system. I regret to say.
Well, thank you very much, Dilip. And I think it's also important for us to recognize that all of us share a responsibility in this. And there is an enormous burden and even responsibility on the part of the schools in particular, where young minds and even family as a social institution, where young minds and their views and perspectives are shaped. Let me move to the next segment of our discussion today. But for all those viewers, we are live on Facebook and YouTube. Please send in your questions. And at the end of this part of the interview, we will take questions from the audience as well. All right, let me move to Ms. Jayant. Ms. Jayant, orphans, or let's say children from even difficult home environment, be it those situations where parents have been separated, or possibly there are abusive parents, and there are likely vulnerability, both emotional and otherwise, on the part of the children themselves. Now, do you, what would you like to reflect when it comes to the kind of policies and processes that need to be put in place within the school ecosystem to deal with this? Because at the end of the day, there are limits for both schools and universities to do it when it comes to the personal space of the children themselves. Although that personal space, if it is not, conducive for creating that environment, that will directly impact the mindset and the state of mind of the children themselves. So, what kind of systems need to be put in place in schools to deal with this situation?
Thank you, Mr. Raj. I mean, the way you spoke about this issue, I think most of our schools with the RT issue, first thing which comes to my mind is the 25%. So we have children come from different socioeconomic background, especially the 25% children, especially in the primary students 1 to 5. And what we have started noticing now is that children, because of this disparity and challenges at home, the children do come with a lot of baggage many a times, and that comes back into a classroom, and which again comes back in a different form, in the form of bullying, or in terms of creating chaos in the classroom. So we've also had a child, I still remember, in one of the one kid, he had seen his father being killed right in front of his eyes, and imagine the plight of a child like that. So what we have as a system in our school is, of course, we have, again, as I stated, that we have a very strong counseling, life skills program in our school, and also very robust programs in terms of policies are in place. And the counseling program is where, when the moment they start noticing issues with children, sometimes it is reported, sometimes it's not reported by the parent. But when they notice it and the school teacher, the class teacher notices it, they refer the child to the counselor. And the counselor starts working very closely with the child. So this could be not only in terms of children who are orphans or children coming from broken families, and you started noticing this so often these days. Children coming from broken families are, getting into a situation where, the parents sometimes also give mixed, way of dealing with children. There's a dad who says that, because the child is spending 1 week with the father, 1 week with the mother. So imagine the turmoil the kid is going through. So when kids like that come to school, the impact, and then how do they deal with the classmates? It's a very, very, when you look at it, your heart goes out to children. But with the help of counselors, we work around with the child and provide them support as much. But beyond that, when it gets in, we try to get in parental intervention. And in some cases also, if it's required, we need to refer them to, social workers or to counselors outside or therapists outside. We work around with them as well, so that we are able to at least provide the necessary support and comfort for the child.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jain, for that. Dr. Lula, this is an area which is, of course, a major challenge schools are facing, and universities too. In the university context, we use the word ragging, but bullying is a common phenomenon across schools. The bullied children, more often than not, are reluctant to speak against such acts, and such incidents negatively impact the emotional well-being of the bullied child. And some of those scars can last for a very long time. So my question to you is that, how can these incidents be effectively tackled by the school? How can children be better prepared to handle those situations? But more importantly, what kind of empowerment and institutional environment that schools ought to create so that A, bullying is not taking place, and B, if those things do happen, there are specific forms of accountability and learning and even engagement with the children themselves.
So thank you, Raj, for that question. I think it's very, very clear to keep in mind that if the child is involved and engaged, interested, okay, these are very, very important aspects of the school processes and systems. And from the beginning of the schooling, if you clearly put down the anti-ragging policy or any policy that schools make, or bullying policy, what we do is we write down a policy, we involve the students. So what we really do is all stakeholders are involved in drafting a policy. So there's a board member, there's a head of a school, there's a primary head, there's a middle school head, there is a student council members, there are parents. We all sit together and come with a complete anti-ragging or bullying policy, which we lay down that what would be the kind of areas that, how would we deal with them? What is bullying? And the definition of bullying, the problem with many children and parents is very little things are called bullying. I remember going to school and there may be many, many things that happened with us in school, but they were not called bullying. I think parents need to understand what is bullying in the big sense. Taking away my pencil or just talking to me or just pushing me is not bullying. So I think the whole understanding of what is bullying and putting it that very clearly to the whole school, to the parent community, and then nibbing it right from the beginning, telling students, talking to them that what can be the consequence and why should you try to kind of please somebody, creating that kind of culture in school where we clearly have that the student council is the first one that they would go to. You know, they are very friendly to their own age group children, and they know who to go to, so they can express, they can talk, and we have these very good student council who take good leadership roles and will talk to the students until it is really really big. It would then go to a teacher, then it would go to the vice principal, and then finally come to me. But if you, from the start of schooling, when children start coming to school, if you create that kind of understanding of the policy, and very clearly within your school, you have the school counselors who talk to the students. So we have a lecture known as very, 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 very clearly where, different topics are taken. Like she said, life skills, where the students have the opportunity to speak to this counselor who's their friend and they can really share. So I think the policy is one thing. If you create it with all stakeholders and if it is clearly understood by all, there's rarely that you would see something big that may happen, because students, council leaders play a very, very major role in making sure that this is clearly understood by the whole school. And none of this can happen in the school premises. And even if it has happened, it's very, the processes are put in place so that the counselors meet them, help them resolve their issues, and then it's taken care of. So that's what I think is a system.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lula, for being candid and even conscious about one of these major challenges. Mr. Rafi, let me ask a very difficult question for you. Depression, as we know, is a common problem. Several factors can be causing it, and most of them may be even happening outside the school. Now, yet this is the reality that in India, depression and issues relating to mental health is not taken seriously. In fact, another challenge that the COVID-19 pandemic has also posed, not just in India, but around the world, is the inherent challenge of mental health and depression that happens not just among schools, but also others. Parents are often in denial. Now, my question to you is that how can schools deal with such a situation when the larger public policy, public health surrounding depression among the key decision makers, including the parents, are not sensitive enough or appreciative enough of the seriousness of the problem? What should be schools doing when that is the scenario that we are facing in India?
Thank you, Professor Raj, for that question. And as you rightly said, depression is a common problem these days. And almost all schools do have pupils facing depression. I think first thing first, we need to keep the parents in the loop, whether they like it or not. They accept it or in the denial. But since they being parents, they have to be kept in the loop. Because most of the time, the child is at home and not in school. The other important thing that we can do, the first thing, in fact, for a depressed child is to help him get an appropriate diagnosis and treatment. And thirdly, to help someone with depression is to offer emotional support. This support involves understanding, patience, affection, and encouragement to the depression sufferer. However, depending on the magnitude, professional intervention and help would be required. It could be psychiatrists, psychologists, or school counselors. That has to be done. Well, to the pupil, I think, because most of the time the child is in the class, so we do have workshops for our teachers where we tell them that, any child, of course, they will be going to the counselors, but they must be encouraged to express their feelings either to their friend or in a journal or using some kind of art to help release their negative feelings. And, asking also the teachers never to set difficult goals for them and to the child also. Because, it'll take a great deal of responsibility while dealing with the depression and fulfilling these goals. So rather, these tasks could be broken into smaller ones. That's what we do with these children. Set them some priorities and do what they actually can do. So we do not expect much from them till such time they actually come out of these, feelings of failure. We try that, they be around with other people and not staying alone, participate in activities if it is possible. That, of course, the counselor will tell us. And also try maybe exercising, play games. And the other thing is, we should not rush or overdo it. And we also shouldn't get upset about it, that, child is not being cured. So I have a child in my school who went into severe depression when he was in 9, and the boy is now in 12. And imagine he's been doing fairly well. He's still under medication, but the school has been there right with him. So the child needs to be told that, do not accept negative thinking. It's part of depression and it will disappear. That's for sure. And what I always tell my pupils, as well as the teachers, all successful people aren't happy, and happy people aren't successful. If you have to choose, then choose happiness. Pursue your passions, but don't give up. and failure is not the end of the road.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rafi, for that really comprehensive response. Because I want to stick with this, discussion surrounding mental health and depression. Can I ask Mr. Gulati? Now, most schools do not have, psychologists and counselors. Of course, your school would be clearly an exception. So my question to you is that why is that the case, that the situation with regard to a stronger emphasis on mental health, including the role of psychologists and counselors, have not taken deep roots into the schools? And now, even when counselors are present, the students often hesitate to go to them. So is there a way for schools to manage the mental health situation? Now, of course, I'm conscious of the fact that there are lots of, let's say, biases and prejudices against the very idea of people visiting counselors. So in that milieu in which we are dealing with those prejudices, how do we respond to this challenge?
Yeah. You see, addressing the first part of the issue is why aren't there enough counselors in this? The macro understanding of the profession tells me that there aren't enough counselors in our country. The training of mental health is something that's recent, but the optimism is that it's really becoming a profession, a preferred profession. And one of the recent indicators is that in Lady Shri Ram College this year, the psychology honors has attracted a cutoff of 100%. I'm sure you'll be aware of that. And there's no second list. I know that because some of our students were aspiring to go there.
I must tell you, Mr. Gulati, we have been thinking about this. So this year, our university has just started the 10th school, the Jindal School of Psychology and Counseling, and we have launched the Bachelor of Arts Honors in Psychology. And believe it or not, in the first few weeks, this was 2021, and we've got literally 200 plus, interest so quickly. It's just, pretty unprecedented.
I must applaud that initiative, because we definitely need more schools for behavioral sciences. And I'm sure being Jindal University being what it is, will come up with a school that's really effective in not only teaching but also empowering students to practice their science and art. So, like you said, that there aren't enough counselors. That's one. Secondly, there isn't enough investment in mental health. There isn't. People do not consider it worthwhile to be paying to counselors. When it comes to school context, I tell you, one of the most difficult positions that we struggle with in recruitment is counselors, because schools cannot give them a career which a mental health setup or a hospital gives them. If they are in the business of practicing clinical psychology, they want to be in clinics. That is where the gratification is higher. That's where the width of exposure is higher. There is much more recognition. There is also decent amount of compensation for all the efforts that they put in. So that's as regards as why schools are not able to attract. That's one. Secondly, the schools themselves are not desirous of investing heavily into the counseling setup, because it does not directly contribute to the tangible outcomes that are expected of a school. That's the second reason. Third reason, which I've seen in our system as well as in lots of other systems, is the resistance to a mental health specialist coming in, which takes away the power from the teachers into the hands of a specialist and they don't like it. Now, the second part of the question is about people not going to counselors even if there's availability. That's partly because of stigmatization of mental health. Secondly, because of the resistances shown by the system. And thirdly, because parents also are very, very conscious of what it will do to the social standing of the child. Now, there really are no easy answers. I'm sure you know that. It requires sensitization. It requires destigmatization of the practice. And it requires people to be not only to be told, but to be convinced that depression is not a problem. It's as much common and as prevalent as common cold, if not corona. So it's common. Secondly, the word depression is used, unfortunately, is used very loosely. It's almost sprayed like aerosol. A child who is not in a good mood can also be labeled stereotypically as depressive. A child who is not very exuberant, is not very gregarious, can also be labeled as it. So like I heard from John saying that we usually want to get them the right diagnosis only when there is a prolonged issue and dysfunctionality that's visible, which is validated by a trained professional, can be, as a school system, try and make an intervention to cure depression. So to sum it, I think destigmatization and more acceptance of emotional well-being is a long-run process which requires a paradigm shift in the way the society thinks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gulati, for that. Dilip, now we know that schools are cocooned spaces, but most children have free access to internet. They watch television, and one way or the other, they become familiar with the social realities of our country. Of course, we are all familiar with Nirbhaya, Kathua, or Hathras, society. Sexual abuse, including that of boys, is unfortunately a reality. According to the National Crime Records Bureau in 2018, 109 children were sexually abused daily. So my question to you is that to what extent schools can play a responsive and a responsible role in such situations? More importantly, is there a way for schools to play a proactive role in preventing such occurrences? But what ought to be the collaborative way by which they can work with law enforcement mechanisms as well, and the delicate line that gets drawn between behavior that can be reformed and even changed, but the ones that transcend certain boundaries and invites a legal and a law enforcement intervention. And even if reform has to happen, it has to happen through the framework of law, because after all, schools, colleges, universities at the first level do a lot of things within the disciplinary context of the school itself.
Yeah, I think Ashish probably answered it, that you've got to strike a balance between being sympathetic to aberrant behavior and also discipline. Unfortunately, what's happening in India's school is that we tend to go to one extreme or the other. So obviously the educator's role, as I'm sure all of you are aware, I don't need to tell you, is to take the middle path, and is to show sympathy up to a point, and then beyond that, you have to come down on students who are misbehaving, because one can't let the general interest be jeopardized by the odd person who refuses to reform and to improve his behavior. So I would say the first thing that it's very important for school teachers and so to consciously teach is, like you said, gender sensitivity. There's too much lack of respect for women in this country, and the fact that it persists after so many years, 70 years after our independence, it shows that something is not being taught in our schools, which should be taught. So I would say gender respect is very important. And so, we are such a diverse country with so many 29 languages, 278 dialects, and therefore tolerance, mutual tolerance, teamwork, harmony has to be consciously propagated in the country's classroom and not as add-ons to subjects which are being taught. So the teacher, I think the parents, the teacher's role is of prime importance in this, in that they have to reiterate on every possible occasion that when there's harmony and there's teamwork, everybody, society becomes stronger, the nation becomes stronger, and I don't think at the same time you have politicians who believe in divide and rule and majoritarian politics and these kind of concepts. So the teachers really have to take the bull by the horns and perhaps say the opposite of what politicians are saying. And generally speaking, teachers tend to shun politics and political subjects and all, and such confrontation. So I think now the time has come when you have to consciously contradict official lines and perhaps political utterances and say this is not correct. And one has to, as you say, be au fait with what's happening in society. Schools can't be ivory towers or citadels which are totally divorced from what's happening outside. And there needs to be ongoing discussion in classrooms about injustices that are so widely prevalent in Indian society, which is actually a shameful indictment of the manner in which we have frittered away the independence which was fought so bravely by Mahatma Gandhi and the freedom fighters. It's a matter of great shame that today India is considered a very unsafe country for women. There's so much caste and gender violence and communal prejudice. It's quite shameful, and I think the teachers community has to step forward and say this is not acceptable, and this is enough. We're not going to tolerate it anymore.
Thank you very much, Dilip, for that. For all those who are watching, we are coming to the end of this segment, and so do send in your questions. We are live on Facebook and YouTube, and I will take your questions to our distinguished educators. Let me move to Ms. Jain. Ms. Jain, incidences like riots and violence impacts large numbers of children in their mindset. The children may be vulnerable. Sometimes in extreme situations, they might have even lost a family member or a friend, or they may have faced a traumatic situation. And now after that type of experience, when they enter the school, the learning ecosystem can be demotivating or even not necessarily inspiring. And of course, we know that exams need to be conducted, schools need to function, what has to happen in the learning context needs to happen. So my question to you is that what should be the role of teachers and school management to address specific forms of vulnerability among students who might have had a different experience to deal with and need to be given special attention?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Raj. I know in a year, we'll definitely encounter one or two situations like that, where a child probably absents himself because of some issues at home and very, very grave problem. So the child is grappling with that issue. But when he comes to school, eventually when the child comes to school, it's important for us in the school to be, mindful of the situation where the child has gone through. And in the meanwhile, when we know that it's a known case, we try to sensitize our teachers first to ensure that they know the case, and the teachers in their own way, without giving in too much of the confidentiality bit of it, sensitize the classmates so that when the child comes back to school, there's a certain amount of sensitivity around the kid. So that's what is taken care as a first step. But eventually, if there are exams, there are portions which are lagged, the teachers stay back with the child, probably help up with some catch-up classes, if that's a possibility, which is, after school. Even now in a COVID situation, if something like this happens, the asynchronous modules of learning, which has been, encapsulated, that's been given to children. We had a case like this last year. The child was in grade 12, and his dad passed away just in the midst of exam. And that's when we had to make an appeal to Cambridge to say that, is there an option? And Cambridge, being very, very nice, they just gave a special consideration. And during that consideration, the child was exempted from doing one of the paper. And when they, added other components, the child got an overall grade, and there was a consideration given. So if we as a school are proactive, are aware of the policies around internally, we are mindful of it. But even if we have to reach out externally to boards and work around with them, definitely, I think the boards are also sensitive and they know that these are options available. So it's definitely possible as long as we are all in it together to support the child.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jayant. Dr. Lula, do you think that our school curriculum focuses adequately on skills sets and skills that are needed for conflict resolution? Now, how can we inculcate such themes more strongly in the curriculum and pedagogy so that every child can benefit from it? I mean, what are the ways by which we can, let's say, place emphasis on negotiation, or for that matter, even accommodation, or recognizing the importance of give and take? It's one thing for these things to become part of the curriculum, but how do we transfer that curriculum and learning to a more experiential form of learning opportunity for our students?
So, thank you, Professor Raj. I think it's very, very important. At our school, what we do is to set up a very, very clear teaching and learning policy, where we talk about various strategies of teaching. How do you really make students involved and engaged in the learning process and experiential learning? The whole heart and soul of a school curriculum is basically dependent on the ATL skills, we say approaches to teaching and learning. When you see a curriculum is more content heavy, and knowledge based, that's where the problems are more, where it's more rote memory, more content, more knowledge based. But when you see a curriculum which is more application based, which is more skill based, how do you use that? How do you apply the content that you've learned? How do you make sure there's application to every concept? So at Podar, we design a concept-based curriculum where we actually make sure that all concepts that we take are deep driven, and the skills that need to be developed, exactly like you said, communication skills, research skills, interpretation skills, critical thinking skills. How do you challenge students? How do you really engage them? So we make sure that we use various approaches to teaching and learning. What drives school? There are three drivers to the approaches to teaching and learning in the school: is inquiry, conceptual understanding, and problem-based learning. When you say problem-based, is to put the children in the pit and then make them find out the problem, make them investigate, make them explore. So I think at Podar, we clearly, for last 20 years, I mean, we've been trying and we have failed and retried and we've worked on it. So we made sure that how do we make the curriculum more skill-based than content-based, more concept-based than content-based. So I think as long as the curriculum is skill-based and content, and the teaching strategies, so every curriculum has three aspects: the written curriculum, the taught curriculum, and the assessed curriculum. So first you make sure that you build a curriculum with all these skills, and then make sure that there are drivers to the curriculum, okay, that drive the curriculum, the taught curriculum, how you teach it. So what you teach, how you teach, and finally, how do you know what has been learned, how you assess it. So you make sure that these three aspects of the curriculum are taken care of to create that experiential learning in classroom.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Lula, for that. Let me move to Mr. Rafi. Mr. Rafi, this is a question about the situation of teachers themselves. Now, we know teachers are often stretched for their time and work under the challenging conditions that they are. In fact, if there is something that the coronavirus pandemic has taught us, is the extraordinary role performed by teachers all over the country and around the world. Now, when the external environment presents challenges, for example, such as, say, riots or floods or political unrest, or their own lives have been impacted along with the lives of the students, just as it is in the middle of the global pandemic. Now, my question to you is that, as an institution, how can schools help its teachers become better prepared for handling such situations? How can we build resilience among our own teachers so that they are able to provide the necessary leadership and confidence to the children themselves?
Thank you, Professor Raj, for that very pertinent question, because it was during this pandemic that there were new challenges that we all are facing, and especially with the teachers. And so we had to ensure their physical and emotional well-being of the teachers, of course, also the students. But and the biggest problem that we were facing at that time was that most of our teachers are not tech savvy, and suddenly they had to switch over to this new platform, which was completely digitalized. So we did have a workshop for them, motivated them. I personally had to do that, because when I'm saying they were not tech savvy, that children are more comfortable using those devices rather than them, but they were so happy to learn, and they picked up. Resilience, as you just mentioned, was very important, and the empathy for the teachers. And this was just done through some workshops that we did over Zoom with my teachers, when I personally spoke to all of them. Of course, different sections for the pre-primary, the primary, the junior, middle, and senior, and motivated them, inspired them. And so the online learning had to continue. And of course, there are new challenges now when we'll have children also now moving in, where we'll have both the real and the virtual classes on, going side by side. So I try to tell my teachers, always to believe in yourself. And I tell them, don't let your fears overwhelm you. The barriers that you face, don't let you feel that you're not capable. Take control of your life by taking control of your attitude. And the disappointments will be there, but they are temporary. Live life honestly and just move on. But the other thing that otherwise also I tell them is, act and don't wait to be invited. You need to create opportunities and live them. Thirdly, I also tell them, a very important trait that a teacher must possess is, give back, be generous. You have to give back to the society. So life is not just about warming oneself by the fire. It's about lighting up the fire and building the fire. So it's a continuous process, and that's what I tell them. Continue to learn, be curious, be open to others whose interests differ from yours. Read, learn, take responsibility of successes and failures, be resilient. So that is what we do to our teachers, and I think we were very successful in handling this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Rafi. Mr. Gulati, building on that question, what do you think ought to be the mechanism for conflict resolution among teachers, or even between teachers and management? And now there's very good indication today that there will be reasonable people who might disagree with decisions. What lessons have you learned in your own life and career regarding managing conflicts? And the heart of managing conflicts clearly is about leadership and trust, but this may not necessarily be available at all situations. So how do you deal with that type of situation within schools?
Thanks, Raj. That's a beautiful question in the context. You see, in my experience, and we are a 40-year-old institution, and a lot has changed in the last 40 years. The one thing that I have not only learned but have thorough conviction in is that schools have traditionally been hierarchical, functional, and transactional. in context of the leadership. And this distribution of power, which is tilted in favor of the position holders, who are also the decision makers, is what causes conflict. Because the structure, which is operationalized through culture, through processes, and through traditions, and through rules and regulations of reward and punishment, discounts the individual agency of the teachers. Now, something which we have learned the hard way is that in a teaching learning environment, which is where the aim is developmental and where the exchange ought to be more free-flowing, there have to be empowerment models or empowerment practices in place, which empower, which are collegial in nature, and which also allow for some distribution of power, decision-making authority, and if not to a great extent, if not to 100% extent, at least to an extent of healthy functionality, allow all voices to be heard and be the interplay of those complexities be operationalized to create what Dilip described as a balanced environment, which is more tilted towards collegiality, egalitarianism, and developmental purpose of schools as opposed to control and command structures that we have been seeing in the past. Now the conflict happens that when the efficiency versus the purpose is the dichotomy that the schools are faced with. Schools are expected to efficiently run like factories. Teachers work like assembly line workers. The focus is on optimization. There are the policy mandates require each teacher to take a certain number of instructional classes. Schools are unable to or not willing to hire more teachers so that they have more time at hand for their developmental and research activities. Now, this is where I would build on what Dilip says about the policy and the significance given to schools in terms of their autonomy, in terms of their agency of social change, which has not only been undermined but completely been discounted in this country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gulati. We have, of course, come to the end of this segment, and what I'm going to do is I have several questions that have come, so I'm going to take that question. But before I take the questions, Dilip, a quick question to you, because you're somebody who has been closely observing the changing nature of public policy and the role of government. In all of this, what do you think ought to be the role of school boards, particularly the education departments of both state governments and even the union, Ministry of Education? Because every now and then if a problem happens, these bodies react and they are not necessarily proactive. And more importantly, that also creates enormous pressure on schools to do things in a more reactive manner. So my question to you is that what ought to be the way government agencies and state government bodies in particular should do about it?
One of the biggest failings of Indian education is that the government neglects its own 1.2 million government schools and his attention is focused on regulating private schools. I think that's the fundamental problem in of education in this country, and why we're not progressing as other countries have in education. I think the most important job of government is to get their schools in good shape, and make sure that learning outcomes, teacher truancy, all that is eliminated, and that they become like model institutions, so that they can compete with private education. This is happening all over the world except in India. Here, the entire attention of the Neta Babu Brotherhood is focused on regulating private schools. Meanwhile, in their own backyard, the schools are going to seed the government schools. So I think that's a fundamental problem. And in education world, anyway, we repeatedly keep telling our leaders and politicians and the Neta Babu Brotherhood, set your own house in order and grant greater autonomy to schools. These people know what they're doing. Otherwise, people are voting with their feet and they all want to go to private schools. That means something's fundamentally wrong with government schools. So why not fix the government schools? Make them model institutions. And that way the whole system will improve. I think that's really what's required.
All right. Thank you very much, Dilip. All right, let's move into the questions. I probably have now received over 25 questions. I'm going to take a few. So let me start with Ms. Jayant. Ms. Jayant, there's a question from Murugavel, who's asking, what would be the right approach to develop a sense of responsibility, patriotism, and moral behavior in school children within the schooling environment? Should experiential learning be the answer?
Thank you. About the school environment, about experiential learning. So I would say it is important. Like Mr. Dilip was saying that, value add or life skills seems to be, just there, but are we actually embraced it? So what we have it, either it's the national curriculum or the international curriculum, it is there. I mean, everybody talks about having aspects which are those socio-cultural aspects which need to be adhered to. But it is always sitting on the periphery. So if we as a school system try to make it as a core, the fundamental block, the moment you make that as a fundamental block, people don't take it as one of those peripheral subjects. The moment, there is a band or there is a riot happens, the subject which gets neglected is the value-add classes. So they say, okay, this is one class can go because the core subjects are physics, chemistry, math, sciences, and they need to be because you have to finish the syllabus. Because the way we implicitly or explicitly give a treatment to subjects like these is where, children also take it that, okay, these are subjects which are just there. So if we can make these subjects as part of a co-curriculum and value add is taught through them, and which teach children negotiation, conflict resolution, if all this aspect come in there as part of your classes. So in our school, we have a subject called global perspective as well. So where we teach children to pick up world issues. These could be local issues or world national issues. And children actually look at that case very, very, closely, try to find solutions to the problem. So if they go in, have that authentic learning experiences, I'm sure we'll be able to get a little more evolved children to understand what life is. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jayant, for that. There's another question. Dr. Lula might be able to answer this question. This question is about the lack of counselors. There's an enormous, this is from Beaton Biswas, is asking, do we face a serious challenge of good number of experienced counselors, particularly in different parts of India? And how do we fill up this deficiency when the demand for mental health interventions in schools are so high?
So yeah, I think Mr. Ashish Gulati very clearly said in his talk about lack of having number of courses in institutions who actually go in for majors in psychology. And it is true that most parents want their children to do the maths and the science more than the liberal arts, unfortunately. So you will not find many kind of teachers, counselors available to the extent of doing their majors in the subject that is required for them when they get into schools to do counseling for students. So you would find that gap because there are not many takers in universities. I don't know whether I've seen in India, in Mumbai, in some colleges, they don't have many takers for psychology, they don't have many takers for liberal arts. There are more takers for the sciences and the economics and the business management. So, yes, we do find that when you need a real good counselor, you don't get that kind of applicants. And I think that's where we are happy to hear that Jindal has started a new block of majors in psychology, which is very, very important aspect. So I think schools do have counselors. In most schools, there would be at least one or two counselors, depending upon the capacity and the number of students. However, you don't have many applicants when it comes to really getting out the best counselors in schools. So I think there is a gap which needs to be filled by having more takers. So like we say that there are not many takers for history. There are not many takers for geography. You'll find more takers for business, accounts, physics, chemistry, bio. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that in Mumbai. So some schools may lack that specialist. I think counseling is a specialist area, especially when schools are concerned. Behavior problems, depression problems, there need to be proper counseling cell, which is important for schools. So yes, there may be many schools that may not have those kind of real counselors to support students.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lula, for that. Next question is for Mr. Rafi. Mr. Rafi, this is about something that we all are facing in a way. There's a question about, this is Raza Kasim, and Raza Kasim is asking, don't you think that the noisy debates on news channels are possibly encouraging even loud and violent behavior among young learners? And what can schools do so that debates and discussions can be more democratic and more engaging as opposed to what ends up happening in televisions?
So, debating is our forte at La Martiniere. And so I think, if all schools stick to the...
That's why I asked you that question.
So if all schools stick to that, I think, the children should learn it's not about noises and the clutter. It's about actually expressing your views and also listening to the arguments and then counter them. So if we start that at the junior level and then, bring it up in the middle and senior school, I think children would learn whatever style, whether Oxford or Cambridge. But I think that's what is missing now. So children actually will start aping otherwise what they see over TV. So I think there need to be not only practices, but also teachers who are in charge of these activities to teach them. And fortunately for us, even our senior boys, they teach the younger ones. So for us, that has not been the case. But I think if other schools also follow this example, I think we can overcome this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rafi. Mr. Gulati, there's a question. This is about from Ramesh Kumar. And Ramesh is asking that there's a question about inequalities. The children who live in poor communities and slums are mostly neglected, and they often become victims of trafficking and exploitation. Now, what could be the role of, say, privileged schools, colleges, universities, including us, when it comes to responding to the larger challenges and vulnerability that other children face who may not be part of our own institutions? How can our institutions respond to those challenges?
See, as we spoke about emotional well-being, I think social work and social sensitivity is another area where we need to work. Fortunately for us, emotional well-being was thought of as a intervention which was mandated by CBSE, and it precipitated in a lot of schools. Social work is still yet something which is uh, to be given its due and to be channelized through schools. I come across a lots of students in our schools who are very concerned about what they see about social inequality around them, but they uh, they hardly find any channels to to let alone address the issue, to even connect and understand or empathize with the issue. Uh, this is and as we know that the social disparity in our country is much larger than most countries in the world, including China. So I think this is something which could be addressed by introduction of social work, if we want to call it that, uh, by the introduction of social projects that the schools should be mandated to take on and sensitize the students, and within their limited means contribute to uh, well, if not uh, bridge or eradicate such social inequalities, at least have empathy and contribute locally as much as possible to them. And of course, social inequality by and large remains an issue beyond the scope of school education, as it's a macro subject which is which needs much larger intervention by the governments and the social sector.
Thank you, Mr. Gulati, for that. Dilip, there is this, the question really is about teacher training. Corporations and companies and business enterprises place a lot of emphasis on training and capacity building. So generally speaking, the on-the-job training that school teachers in particular end up having rarely go beyond their own subject matter expertise, if at all it happens. So can training and capacity building be a significant part of the answer for building this capacity within schools?
Absolutely, yeah, that's a very good idea. In fact, as I said, it should be teachers should be consciously taught to get engaged with the societies in which they live. And I've noticed one of the things is that schools tend to shy away from so-called controversial subjects which are happening in society outside because they, in the interest of peace and quiet. I don't think that's a good thing. I think it's very important that school children, teachers, and particularly teachers encourage such discussion, that trained to be able to, as I think Ashish said, that they should be trained to encourage balanced discussions. I think Mr. Rafi said, and in debates, and that there are the rules of civilized engagement. There's a rule of discussion, because after all, what is democracy? It's governance by discussion. And the China model and all that, we don't want it in this country. I think we prefer, and teachers have a very important nation building role, which I regret to say, I don't think they've been able to discharge it so far, looking at the evidence of what's happening in society. But I think now they need to take special care to make sure that they teach good values rather than merely curriculums and high marks and good academic scores. I don't think that's really the function of teachers. And perhaps they need to pay more attention by way of in-service training, by exposing teachers to a wider society and universities, so that they become more rounded personality who think beyond exam marks and performance in academic performances, and teach children how to build great institutions and a better society. I think the teachers have a critical role to play in this. and unfortunately not discharged it to the extent they should have.
Well, thank you very much. And I have at least 15 questions unanswered. I'm going to exercise. We are all my prerogative as chair to end this session. But I want to quickly ask one question to all of you. That is for all those teachers and counselors and principals who are watching this program, and of course, students and parents. What is your message to them as they deal with this extraordinary global pandemic on the one hand, and of course, the challenges relating to conflict resolution and peace as well? Let me begin with Ms. Jayant.
I would appeal to all the schools and the school principals to make, social SEL, the social emotional learning and well-being program as part of the core curriculum.
Oh, Ms. Jayant, we suddenly lost you. We're not able to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I said, one appeal I would love to make to all the schools is to make SEL program, that the social emotional learning and well-being and mindfulness program as part of your core school curriculum, and everybody respects and values that. I think that's what I would tell all schools to do that.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. And of course, Dr. Lula.
So I would say empathy, creativity, and happiness. Create happy schools, create happy environments, listen to the students. So we say voice and choice. Let students have their voice and give them choices. So I think voice and choice is what we purely believe in, and give them the voice, give students a voice, give them choice, and create agency. Agency is nothing, but let them create the tomorrow. Give them the opportunity to create the tomorrow. Don't create the tomorrow for them. Let them create it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lula. Mr. John Rafi.
I would just echo what my co-panelists have just said. So we need to ensure, and I'll ask all the principals and all the schools management to ensure that the child feels loved and cared for, and that he enjoys coming to school. That's very important. They need to be happy, and once that happens, they feel that sense of belongingness. So it is their school, and the sense of belongingness, when it takes deep root, it is only because of the trust factor. And let me give just a very short, small example. Now, trust factor, when I say, it's like a toddler. If supposing you put him the father puts him on the cabinet and tells him to jump, without any hesitation, the toddler will jump right into his arms. That is trust factor. So let the children have that trust in their school. That's what. And then you will find that they'll be appreciative, they'll be grateful, they'll be loyal to the school. That's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Gulati.
All the school principals and educators, and I say this with a lot of conviction, emphatically, claim your rightful space of pride in the society and do not be the vehicles and implementers of political and public policy on education in compliance of completion of syllabi and in compliance of the testing, standardized testing systems which are expected of schools. You are the unsung nation building heroes. Nobody is going to come and give you an invitation to claim the space that you deserve. Claim it now. Henceforth, claim that space.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gulati. And of course, Dilip, you have the last word as usual.
Well, my advice to principals and teachers is teach children harmony and teamwork. there is, and it's a cliche, of course, that unity in diversity it should be the maximum to make a strong nation and a strong society. Unfortunately, currently we are a highly divided society, all kind of antagonisms, etc. I think the educators community, starting from school teachers and university teachers, ought to consciously teach the values of nation building, harmony through and harmony through teamwork, and re-emphasize and resurrect the old concept of unity in diversity.
Thank you very much to all of you. What an extraordinary panel and a wonderful group of educators. I want to first of all thank you for taking the time out to be part of this colloquium. All of us, and I am particularly definitely learned a lot. But more importantly, I want to appreciate your individual leadership and the institutional contributions that you have all been making with a view to recognizing the importance of the role of educators. You are truly eminent educators, but also you're deeply conscious and sensitive about the important role and responsibility that educators have in shaping the future of young people. With those words, on behalf of my colleague and friend Dilip, as well as myself, I would like to extend a sense of gratitude for accepting our invitation. Thank you for all the members of audience. I know I responded to you, some of you by text and WhatsApp, but I'm afraid we couldn't take the questions. But I deeply appreciate that you joined us in this discussion. Thank you, and be safe and take care.
Okay, good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.